Welcome to the Black-liberation.tech podcast, brought to you by Jordan Nuance LLC and hosted by Dr. Renee Jordan. This podcast is a accumulation of Dr. Jordan's dissertation work and her passion for empowering Latinas, Afro-Latinas, Black women, and girls to navigate the academic and professional worlds with confidence and success. Whether you're a mother or guardian guiding a child through grades 6 through 12, an undergrad or grad student, someone working on a dissertation or thesis, or simply looking to carve out your niche in the career landscape, this podcast is for you. Each episode, Dr. Jordan shares her story, offers invaluable advice, and provides practical coaching to help you thrive in school, work, and beyond. Join our community on patreon.com/BlackLiberationTech and become a member for as low as $5 per month. As a member, you'll gain exclusive access to live recordings, impromptu academic and career coaching, and a network of like-minded individuals committed to mutual support and success. You're also welcome to follow Black Liberation Tech on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and LinkedIn, or Black Lib Tech on X, formerly known as Twitter. Visit black-liberation.tech for even more information on Dr. Jordan's adventure in Inglés o Español. Tune in, get inspired, and let's embark on this journey together. Welcome to black-liberation.tech, where your success story begins. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Black-liberation.tech podcast. I am your host, Dr. Renee Jordan, and I am here to talk about mapping out your semester. So in addition to talking to my niece about creating a list, I also suggested that she put due dates for assignments and readings on a calendar. Now, the readings is very important. You have to figure out your classes. Some instructors actually talk about whatever it is that they want to talk about during class, but the actual quizzes, tests, papers, and assignments are based on the readings that are given. So some students who are used to having their instructors or teachers provide them with what they need to know in class might find it difficult to operate in this kind of classroom, but it does happen. It's not just that the teacher is talking about whatever he or she or they want to during class. They're giving you practical application or examples or case studies in class to get you to think about what your reading assignment was all about. So when you have an instructor that has the reading assignments listed on the syllabus, take it very seriously. Read those assignments, make outlines, use the titles as ways to break up your outline. Use the bold print in terms of vocabulary words, theories, policies, or important notes. For example, the little boxes that appear next to the text, off to the right or to the left, or even in the middle. Make note of those notes, because textbooks and books that are geared specifically towards classroom instruction have these types of things in place to help you study. So take advantage of those. Use them as hints. Use them as tricks to help you get organized while you read. It's helpful to take notes while you read so that you can remember what you wrote. Now, at some point, going from undergraduate to graduate school, specifically my master's, I had to go from handwriting my notes to highlighting and making notes in the margin on my PDF files. And I did that because the number of readings that I had to get done before class, it simply increased faster than what I could write. And so in order to keep up with the reading, this was my trick. I would highlight a paragraph or two paragraphs at a time and allow Siri to read the text to me. I can actually listen faster than I can read. That's something that I learned about myself, and I accredit it to being a singer. So growing up, I sang in the choir, and I actually sang in the choir for 25 years. So that means even during undergraduate school, when I would go home every other weekend, I was in the choir. And we went from having 3 rehearsals a week to 2 rehearsals a week to, at times for me, 1 rehearsal a week. So that meant I had to learn a new song in 1 rehearsal. So I treated my reading like a rehearsal, if you will. I had to go from having time to take notes by hand, make flashcards, and more extensive note taking to getting it in as quick as possible. And that meant using my PDFs as my notes that had the actual reading, the articles on it, and highlighting the text, making notes in the margins. We went primarily from reading textbooks to reading articles. So peer review articles specifically. And as a result, I needed to make the best of my time and the best of my organization skills. And I also needed to make sure I was engaging with the text while I read in a way that made sense to me so that I would have something to add to the conversation when we got back to class. Because all of these things added up to what I needed to know and understand and be able to apply when it came to writing essays for exams, as well as in policy memos, papers, projects. They just didn't go away. And so the text that we read ended up being a part of our references in our papers, but we had to describe how they applied. So once again, when you are assigned readings, take it seriously. Make sure that you're including time in your calendar to block out and sit down and read. Make sure that you're taking notes. Now, if you have the time to take handwritten notes, and that's your favorite thing to do, and you have notebooks upon notebooks, and I still have spiral notebooks that have handwritten notes in it, then please do that. If you find that you are pressed for time, don't skip the reading. Read anyway. Get help from Siri. It's an accessibility tool. What works for one person in order to help them access information can work for more people who may not necessarily be visually impaired, but can make use of being able to hear the text. So please consider using the accessibility feature, whether you have a Apple or a PC device. At one point, I had Siri reading my text while I drove 35 miles to work. Reading, you just can't get away from it when you're talking about learning, because in undergrad and graduate school, there's just not enough time in class to go over all of the material that you need to be aware of in order to be an informed and educated individual in your field. So reading is very important. So make sure that you're blocking time out on your calendar to read. In my text messages to my niece, I also explained to her that it's okay not to go home every weekend. Yes, she was at Morgan State. Yes, she was less than an hour away from home, but she needed to give herself time to actually sit and do her work, specifically her reading, because it's that important. It takes time. And so you need to make sure that you stay on top of your reading, particularly until you figure out how your instructor is presenting information, how they assess you on the information that they present, and then what information you need in order to complete the task and assignments, papers, and projects for that class in order to do well. So make sure you stay on top of your reading. When you go home on the weekend, I can't promise you that your parents are going to understand that you can't get up and take out the trash, do the laundry, watch your little brother or sister, or go with them to the store, or go with them to this, that, and the third. So sometimes you really need to stay at school if you are living on campus in order to get your work done, because life at home goes on whether you are there or not. And if you're there, that means you might have to take part of the responsibilities, or you might want to actually enjoy spending time with your family. And that might not be a good idea every weekend, maybe every other weekend. But make sure you check the times that you go home up against the time that you have to get your work done. Another reason a calendar is so important is because it shows you how fast an assignment is coming up. So you want to make sure that you include events, assignments, projects, tests, birthdays, group meetings. Yes, group work is not fun, but you want to include those on your calendar so you'll know when you are expected to be there. And please don't forget to add school closings, holidays, reading days, and final exam week to your calendar. In undergraduate school, it wasn't enough for me to know how much work I had. I needed to be able to see how many weeks I had to get it done. And I needed to be able to do so at a glance. And a calendar is something that allowed me to take a look at what I had to accomplish at a glance. On top of having work For school, I also had federal work study in undergraduate school. So I needed to make sure that I mapped out my schedule on my calendar as well. Other things that I needed to include on my calendar were break times. Times to eat, times to be in my room, time to take 20-minute naps. Yes, set a timer because it is possible to oversleep and miss class. I also needed to know when I had enough time to go and watch a movie, as well as walk to the store. Time management is key when you're intentional about your education. In my text to my niece, I told her to set her priorities. It's okay not to go home every weekend. You need to give yourself time to do your work. And that means working on it with little to no distractions. It's good to have fun, but you must manage and balance your time. No one does this for you in college, so it's up to you. Please take note of these notes when you are planning and mapping out your semester. For those who work full-time, here are some tips for you. In my master's program, when I attended Bowie State, I did pretty good with just taking the day off the day of a test or giving myself 2 days in advance to complete a paper. But when I got to my master's of public policy class, I needed more than that. I needed to shut down after work completely. I needed to also not run around so much on the weekend. Now, this might be because I actually worked further away from my job when I was in my master's of public policy class. Like I said, 35 miles one way, 35 miles back the other way. And that meant it was 35 miles to class, where when I was at Bowie State was just 4 miles away from my house. That gave me a lot of time during the week. But when I went to Georgia State, because I worked far away for the first year and a half, I needed to make sure that I had time on the weekend. So at first, I started off with being able to work at the food pantry on the weekends at my church. I had to cut that out because it just took up too much of my time on the weekend, and I needed to be able to focus on my work. And I also needed to be able to give myself a break on the weekend. Now, everybody is not going to take this the same, but yes, you do need time to do absolutely nothing. No schoolwork, no church work, no work, just time for yourself. Because at the end of the day, that's who you're left with. You don't want to stretch yourself too thin. You don't want to burn both ends of the candle, meaning don't wear yourself out because you're all you have. Make sure that you're leaving yourself in good shape with enough sleep, with enough rest, with enough time to decompress and relax, so that when it's time for you to go, whether that's show up at work or show up in your assignments, giving your full effort to your work, you want to make sure that you have the energy necessary to put forth in it. And that means giving yourself time to restore your energy. Specifically, for those who are introverts, you know that you need time away from people to take a break and re-energize. So that's another reason it's important to give yourself time to do absolutely nothing. And don't apologize for it. And as a matter of fact, don't tell anybody you're doing it. Because for some reason, people think you always need to be busy. No, you don't. Not if you want to maintain your mental health and your physical health. You need to give yourself time to breathe. So make sure you schedule that in and don't feel like you have to explain it to anyone. And to keep from feeling like you have to explain it to anyone, just don't tell anybody. You're grown. It's okay to take a break. Now, for those of you who work full-time and you're in a doctoral program, this was a shift for me once again. So going from undergrad to graduate school was a shift in intensity in terms of study and dedication. Going from Bowie State to Georgia State was a shift in intensity because of the travel time that I had to physically go to class. And there was also a different pace in terms of the type and kind of work that I was completing for my Master's of Public Policy work versus my Master's of Education. Because I was teaching when I was doing my Master's of Education, everything folded into what I was doing for work. So it essentially doubled over. And what I did for work worked for school. So that was great. Now, when I got into public policy, that was not the case. I had to go outside of what I was doing as a teacher. I had to go outside of what I was doing as an instructional technologist at the time and bring it in based upon my research interest in education. So it took a couple of more steps, and therefore it took a little bit more effort, more time, more dedication, more energy, and it required me to have more focus than before. With the doctoral program, I had to rev it up even more. At this point, school became just as important as work. And what does that mean? That means if I had a task at work, it was just as important as having a task at school. This was a different level. It required more than just taking a day off here and there. And let me take a moment to explain why. It wasn't just the coursework, it was being able to take advantage of opportunities while I was in my doctoral program. This meant taking off work to go to conferences and to present at conferences. This also meant taking off work to serve as a chair or a discussant at a conference. This also meant taking off work so that I can work on paper proposals, or taking off work to go to my internship that was not paid. So my internship during my Master's of Public Policy fell right during summertime. So I didn't have to take off work and I was getting a check. That was great. But when I switched over and moved out of the classroom and became an instructional technologist, I was now a 12-month employee. I had to actually put in my vacation time so that I could go to my internship. And so what did that look like? That looked like taking half a days, 2 days a week, so that I could go to an in-person class and serve as a teaching assistant for a course. It did have a virtual component, which I could operate on my own time, but the in-person class, I actually had to show up and be there. Also, for my graduate research assistantship, we did an after-school program. That meant I would leave early from work by putting in my vacation time saying, hey, at 4:00, I have to go, so that I could get to my graduate research assistantship by 4:30 to be in place for the after-school program. During the alpha test of my graduate research assistantship, I also needed to take half days off a couple of times a week so that I could be at the school during the day to be in place for my graduate research assistantship. It meant taking time off. Now, what does that mean as someone who works full-time and I'm the only one who performs my job responsibilities and duties is not shared by others? That meant I had to organize my workflow so that when I left my coworkers in a good place. They did not have to look for me because I had something that they needed. They did not have to wonder when I was going to get something done because I made sure that I stayed on top of my work and got it done in a timely fashion. That also meant those who I was collecting reports from already had a email reminder. Speaking of email reminders, I literally mean an email reminder. I would set a calendar invite saying, hey, remember you have a quarterly report due. Attached to that calendar invite, I would set email reminders so that they would get an email a week ahead of time, as well as another reminder 2 days before it was due. So I had to organize myself not only to ensure that I got my schoolwork done, I also had to organize myself to make sure that I was on top of my job. Nobody was looking for me. Things were in place to help keep other people accountable while I was gone of the things that I needed from them in order to ensure that my department was in a good place when it came to reporting and being accountable for what we did in our department. You're welcome to leave your questions and comments, and also leave your tips when it comes to mapping out your semester. Thank you for tuning in to the Black-liberation.tech podcast, brought to you by Jordan Nuance LLC and hosted by Dr. Renee Jordan. We hope today's episode has inspired you and provided valuable insights to help you navigate your academic and professional journey with confidence and success. Remember to like, subscribe, and share, as well as rate and review the podcast to help it become more discoverable. Whether you're guiding a child through grades 6 through 12, tackling undergraduate or graduate studies, working on a dissertation or thesis, or exploring your career options, this podcast is here to support you every step of the way. Join our community on patreon.com/Black-liberation.tech and become a member for as low as $5 per month. As a member, you'll enjoy exclusive access to live recordings, impromptu academic and career coaching, and a network of like-minded individuals committed to mutual support and success. Don't forget to follow Black Liberation Tech on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and LinkedIn, or Black-lib.tech on X, formerly known as Twitter. Visit black-liberation.tech for even more information on Dr. Jordan's adventures, available in both English and Spanish. Stay inspired, stay empowered, and keep moving forward. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.